You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm Dustin and Tony is with me and we're here to discuss everything from March 10th through the 23rd. It's kind of the same kind of news as there was the last 2 weeks ago. There's a little bit of news, a little bit of service updates. We've got a discussion specifically about sports rights. I know everybody's just clamoring for us to talk about sports some more, but that is honestly the biggest news of the past 2 weeks is some sports deals, so we'll get into that for our discussion. But first up, let's start off with some service updates. The first one I want to talk about is, interestingly, there's a new thing going on in Netflix. They're testing something, which is if you have a Netflix account and you're sharing a password with somebody else, Netflix is, if they're able to notice where you are located compared to where the primary, I guess, billing address would be, they're sending you a push notification saying, we suggest getting your own account because we know that you're password sharing. And the idea behind this is they're trying to get more people to subscribe on their own instead of sharing accounts, even though there are lots of people who are sharing accounts. So I think this is an interesting test, but I honestly see this going even further because when you sign up for Netflix and you use a credit card, your credit card is linked to a billing address. They can see whether or not your usage is coming from that same billing zip code as you have for your card. Now, is it always going to work? Probably not, because obviously people travel, obviously people use their mobile devices on the go, and that's not going to work. But I honestly believe that there's probably going to be something in the near future, and if this works with them, it'll probably end up working with some of the other streaming services out there too, because we all know that the biggest thing for streaming services is that password sharing is a huge problem, and if they can tackle this in some way, there's going to be a way for them to try to get more people to subscribe, because while, yes, there are some people who are splitting the cost amongst groups of people for the cost of the service in order to make the service less expensive, and then they share the password for the account itself, I think that there's more people who are more likely to potentially keep using the service if they are using it. And they're not going to lose necessarily subscribers from this. They're probably going to gain subscribers, is the idea behind this.
Oh, man, how do I sum up my point of view in a few words? This isn't going to work. Spoiler alert. I work in software. I'm really conscious of security, and I just want to make sure that my personal accounts or business accounts, that for some reason I want to make sure that no one can get into my profiles. And this could be for email, it could be for Discord, it could be for a bunch of other things. It's just what I care about. There's something that I do and I always set up and I recommend it to other people, and it's called TwoFactor Authentication. So you enter in your password, and then the service that you use will then ask, okay, here is this thing that randomly generates codes. Enter one of those codes into it. Let's confirm. And there you go. Two-factor authentication has been shown to be extremely better than the old way of, okay, you're going to answer questions based on, okay, what is your parents' middle name? What is your dog's name? What was the mascot of your high school? Like those types of questions. Two-factor authentication just works a lot better. And you're able to see, okay, somebody might have compromised the password, but you can double check. And if somebody has attempted and you get a notification for the two-factor, then you know that something's up. I say all that because what I view this feature from Netflix is basically two-factor authentication. Somebody gets a password, you enter in your password, somebody's on a device, right? And then just to make sure, okay, is this the person really you, or is this person part of the account holder? Then they send a notification back to the account holder. Well, if you're friends with these people, right, it's not like... I bet the percentage of people who steal Netflix passwords is kind of low, but you share your Netflix password, you share your streaming service password with other family members or friends. And so because you have this personal relationship, if you know that somebody is accessing this device from this location, you can then just text them the code Like, it is just because the relationship of the account holder and the other user, I really doubt the effectiveness of this new feature. Will it stop a little bit of this fraud? Maybe, but not anything significant enough to really push the ball forward. And I understand Netflix's position that, yes, we love everybody streaming the service. We're so glad that everybody loves the product and loves the content within it. But you have a bunch of freeloaders, and we really want these people to get their own accounts. I totally sympathize with that. I totally understand. But I do not see that this feature will work out. I used to live in St. Louis, and my wife used to live in Alabama. And for a time, we lived apart. And so in this situation, right, we're married. We're not like, random friends that I know or a friend of a friend and take my password, right? Husband and wife. And I probably would have to answer this two-factor authentication thing multiple different times. And at the time we were watching like Grey's Anatomy, the point is it's that would be just a huge burden, and it's a very simple scenario. And I bet that there's other people that have very similar situations of living apart or traveling. It can just be very cumbersome. And to your point about the mobile devices, I don't think that this feature would really affect mobile devices so much. I bet the feature is really going to dial into, okay, do you have like a classic streaming, like a Roku or Apple TV or a smart TV? And, they can get the geolocation data and, make those comparisons, because I think it's much easier to probably analyze those devices because they're static versus, mobile devices. Even computers, I can see, that can work really well. But for iPads or phones, as you go around, it'll be a lot harder to implement something like this based on geolocation data. So overall, I understand where Netflix is coming from, but I really do not see that this solution is going to push the ball forward and push people to get their own accounts with Netflix.
All right. So a quick one that I want to just dive into is that HBO Max has added some customizable profile avatars. Now, I bring this up specifically because I ran into a problem just recently with another streaming service that really annoyed me. So when I signed up for Paramount Plus, one of the things that they had was obviously you set up your profiles. When you set up profiles, you can choose avatars specifically for your profile. Now, everybody has this. It's not something that is uncommon. Specifically, Disney Plus has a variety of different Disney characters. They have National Geographic. All the different characters you could imagine are pretty much there. And they add more as time goes on. Same thing with Netflix. They've added more as they release more Netflix originals that are popular for children or for adults. They add more avatars in there so that you can choose different ones. It makes it easy specifically for the children who are looking for their profile. They can look for the character that they would pick, and then they can pick it if they go into the profile. Now, when HBO Max launched, one of the things that they had was they just used an avatar that had the first letter of whatever the name was of the profile, which it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Amazon Prime uses the exact same method of using just letters rather than having an entire picture for it. However, when Paramount Plus launched and I went in to set up the profiles, they had the smallest selection of avatars that you could possibly imagine. And I was just annoyed by how little they had, specifically because they had a couple of generic ones, but the generic ones were these weird blob creatures that I don't think are actually related to anything. I think they were just their default selections that they had, but none of them were great, and I didn't really want some sort of weird cartoony blob character as my profile. They didn't have any live action characters, and they didn't have any cartoons that I remember that I would even associate with myself to sit there and choose from that. So that was slightly annoying. But it's a minor thing. I'm not using, I don't really need to have a profile avatar. But the really cool thing is that HBO Max has now set it up where not only can you use a variety of characters, because now they have characters just like a lot of the other services, but they have an extensive amount of not only HBO characters that are avatars based off of HBO characters. They have tons of children's ones. They have Max Originals and all kinds of other ones. But the really cool thing that they've done that nobody else has done yet is that they have set it up so that you can actually use a photo for the avatar itself. So you can use a photo itself to be able to customize the avatar that appears all across the devices. And I've messed around with it. It's pretty cool. I mean, there's a Batman avatar now, so there's very little chance I'm going to use anything but that. However, there is a lot of really cool ones, and I like the idea that you could put, specifically for your children, you could use a photo of your child in the picture itself so that they know this is their profile because it's their picture. And I think that's really cool. So it was just a quick thing that I wanted to mention because it's something unique that they've done now that somebody else hasn't done, but it's only a matter of time before other services do it as well. All right, so the next big news was that Disney Plus, this actually happened, and I think we hinted at this last time around. Disney Plus announced that they have actually topped 100 million subscribers. That's huge news because that means they are 50% of the way to catching up with Netflix, who had years upon years of time that they had ahead of Disney Plus launching. So that's really big.
I've been very surprised with the entire growth of Disney Plus. From a service that at the very beginning we complained that there wasn't enough content, that it was basically, resting on the shoulders. It was being carried by the amazing show called The Mandalorian, which I love very much and that everybody should check out. It's been able to grow, and we've broken it down due to, they have this large library of classic like Marvel content, Star Wars content, a bunch of animated stuff. But, it's the idea of Disney Plus probably being sustained by the amount of parents who subscribe because of their kids, and they keep subscribing for that. And this is huge. And we've seen Disney Plus really expand internationally and really push forward. You've seen them have better integrations with, Hulu, with the Star service that's more international, with ESPN Plus, how all these things work in concert. It's been really nice and cool to see how Disney, who a few years ago was just into, their Disney Channel, into the merchandise, to the parks, to the big blockbuster movies that came out between like Frozen and any of the MCU films and the Star Wars films, right? That's like Disney from the 5 years ago. And now to see that they are much more of a digital company and how they are diving into streaming headfirst, it's been really awesome to see in that company. And the fact that they're over 100 million subscribers so quickly, just wow. And they're just releasing more content every single day. You've seen them ramp up their production of the Marvel TV shows that they've been promised since last year, but due to COVID delays, they've had to push it back. And I really think that Disney Plus is on a fantastic trajectory. And I'm excited to see what the numbers are going to be, even at the the next quarter and at the end of the year. Just because I think it is unwise to look at analysts' projections of streaming service numbers, because I still feel like they're never really accurate. That you could probably throw a dart on a number and it'll be a little bit more accurate than the analyst numbers. I bet at the end of the year we're all going to be pleasantly surprised by their growth. So overall, congratulations to Disney Plus topping 100 million subscribers. This is pretty awesome.
One of the things that's obviously helping Disney Plus's growth is the bundles that are occurring and more integration with those bundles. Obviously, we know in international markets, Star has launched, but the other thing that's happened here in the States that's more relevant to some of the Disney Plus bundles is that ESPN Plus live sports and originals are now available on Hulu. So that content is actually integrated into Hulu. If you actually are part of that bundle with ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus, you can actually access all that ESPN Plus content through your Hulu subscription. And honestly, I do believe that at some point, there could be a point very near in the future where maybe Disney Plus content is accessible through Hulu, or even Disney Plus has a spot for content with Hulu like they just did with Star, and then you can access that stuff. And then it's all integrated within one singular app necessary, and then you don't have to worry about going into multiple apps to see content, and it would bolster what Disney Plus has available on their app by itself. It's just a matter of whether or not they choose to do that, but we know it's possible because they're doing it right now with Star in the international markets.
Yeah, you're definitely right, Dustin. The bundles are just one of it was a really good selling point for the streaming service, moving forward. If you want to compare it to Apple TV, and they're pretty in Apple TV's generous offer of, you have a crazy long, trial if you get an Apple device. What was it, like a year free or something? And I think they extended it as well. Like, that's a pretty huge offering, and I thought that was pretty generous at the time. But if you look back at this bundle that Disney Plus launched with, I think it just has more value. You get Disney Plus, you get Hulu. There's a lot of content between the two services. It's very engaging. ESPN Plus, at the time, I was disappointed when I first got the bundle, but now they've added a lot more content, and they've signed a lot more deals for even more content being displayed on their service. I think Disney was at a weird situation of, okay, they just bought Fox, they bought Comcast stake into Hulu. You now have this Hulu service, which is pretty independent. As you know, it's been a business for a very long time. You have Disney Plus that it's starting. You have ESPN Plus, which is like this nascent service that they've been trying to, grow and grow over the years, but it's been very, slow. And now you have these three different products. Okay, now they bring them together with the bundle, and you're now starting to see, all right, let's have better integration between them. So, and I think that this gelling was going to be natural. And I think moving forward, I predict that there's going to be more integration. And maybe a year or two or three, we're starting to see that it's all going to coalesce into one streaming service. Having the ESPN content coming through Hulu, I think is a huge deal. I find the ESPN Plus to be kind of annoying to work with, but I really do like Hulu. I like you get a lot more bang for your buck if you get the live TV bundle, which I think is one of the best live TV experiences, especially in comparison to YouTube TV, which I find very buggy and annoying. There is a lot of different things that you can interact with on Hulu. Now you can get into live sports. You can get different add-ons like Showtime and HBO Max. And so all these things coming on Hulu, I think is natural. And I think it's a natural selling point to customers. It's because Hulu does have a lot of weird content. It's not a part of the Disney family of things. It's always been a conglomeration of different studios' content. So it makes sense that Hulu is the window for ESPN Plus content. And I think that this is going to be huge to drive even subscriptions more and to get people to buy into the bundle more of Disney Plus Hulu. And so I'm really happy about this. I'm really excited. And especially as we know some of the deals that Disney has signed for exclusive content or just content in general to be displayed on ESPN Plus, this is going to be a really huge boom for the three streaming services and then for Disney proper.
All right. So then we're going to jump into some HBO Max. This kind of all goes together, but there's two topics specifically that came out. So there was an investor day in the last 2 weeks, and there's some new numbers that HBO Max has stated. They're anticipating that by the end of 2021, they're actually going to be in the 67 to 70 million subscribers by the end of 2021, combined subscribers between HBO and HBO Max. But their new projections put them at 120 to 150 million global subscribers by 2025, which is huge numbers. That is specifically saying HBO Max. It does not say that those are combined with HBO, but obviously they have the potential to grow when it comes to the international market. They're actually launching in 60 countries over the course of this specific year. So it's entirely possible that this number is possible, but it is a large increase from what they previously forecasted, because back in October of 2019, they forecasted between 75 to 90 million originally within that same time frame. So they're expecting to grow a lot, and their anticipation for that leads into a bunch of other things. We're going to talk about the AVOD stuff in a second, but do you think that these numbers are realistic at this immediate point?
No. I mean, look, I love HBO Max. I routinely watch most of the content. I really do enjoy the service. I think these numbers, didn't they just blow the expectations of their last numbers? Didn't Disney Plus just blow their expectations out of the water? It's 2025. That's in 4 years. We don't know what's going to happen, what integrations they're going to have, how big HBO Max's library is going to be internationally. I think compared to some of these other streaming services with the content that's on HBO Max, that could be a huge hit and might be a thing that people underrate. Because if you think about like how big was Game of Thrones internationally, like it was huge and it garnered a lot of value. And as they keep making content and they keep just having such good shows like a Game of Thrones, it might have a bigger international appeal than I think analysts might be giving it credit for. However, I think these numbers are just, they feel a little bit made up because they're all about hinging on this AVOD solution. And I'm not saying AVOD is going to be bad for HBO Max. I think it's another way to make revenue and especially reach customers who can't really pay a premium for the $15 a month. I understand that move, but when that service isn't even launched yet, where they're just going off projections, probably going off of surveys by people of who they're interested in, focus groups, these numbers mean nothing. So I would rather see projections of, okay, let's get AVOD out. Let's get that going in, the United States and in, Europe. See how the public responds to it. And then you can make more accurate numbers there. So that's just really going to be, I don't understand why people do these numbers. I think it just sounds really sexy and really cool of, okay, here's this analyst, here's this, target suggestion that we're going to do. And then you blow it out of the water. And then you're like, oh, hey, look at our success. And I get that. I appreciate that. And they might be doing their best guess, but they consistently, their predictions are always so much lower than what it's actually going to happen. So that's why I'm not so excited about this article, because do I believe that this is going to be a realistic number in 2025? No. Okay. All right. AVOD tier launching in June. All right. That's pretty cool, but you can't really make projections on a service that's going to add in a new service line. You have no data around that. Like, I don't know, like Dustin, doesn't that seem weird? And maybe I'm just reading into it and just kind of having a philosophical discussion and really diving in too much in myself. But it's just why are we doing this? Why do we have these projections of numbers and we cover them, especially about stuff that hasn't even launched yet?
Well, to be clear, I don't know that the number, obviously the conversation of AVOD pushing their subscriber growth along with their new anticipation of what they will be at within 5 years or 4 years, I think their thing is it's not so much about whether or not AVOD is the defining moment for the service and they're going to garner a ton of subscribers. I think it's just growth in general. To be fair, Disney Plus did the exact same thing back in November or early December when they had their investor day. They gave new numbers saying where they thought they were going to be. I think the intent and the only reason these numbers exist and they do this is because of investors. They want to say to investors, hey, this is what we're forecasting. So, hey, jump on board now and support us, invest in our company. So that way we can make sure that, when we get there, you'll be right alongside us. That's the only reason these numbers exist. Do I think that they downplay their numbers sometimes? Absolutely. I think Disney Plus completely underestimated how many people were going to be subscribing to their service by a long shot, which to me, I don't know where they were getting the numbers that they had initially, because they did blow their numbers out of the water. HBO Max has done well compared to, I think, what a lot of analysts expected them to because of that price point. And I think a lot of analysts are, they're not looking at it when before the launch, they were all like, well, it's $15. It's expensive. I guess if you're already subscribing to HBO, it's not really that big of a deal. But at the same time, I think that those same analysts are the ones that they eat up these numbers. They eat up the fact that now they're projecting this. So if they don't hit it, then we can sit there and say we were right. And if they do hit it, well, everybody wins. So what does it matter? And I think that's the only reason these stupid numbers exist. I agree. I think it's a stupid thing to constantly base the success of your service on what you project your future subscriber count to be. It should just be whatever you do now. The one thing you don't hear a lot at Netflix about is where they project their subscriber count to be. Mostly because they've plateaued here in the United States. In the international markets, they're obviously still growing, but they are not growing. 2020 was obviously a fluke year where they grew significantly, but obviously so did all the other streaming services. So I think ultimately when you look at Netflix, they're not sitting there saying, yes, by 2025, well, maybe they do this. I just don't see it as publicized, but I don't see them going, oh, by 2025, we're going to have 350 million subscribers. No, you don't see that because they're concentrating on their growth quarter to quarter and how they can keep having those increases. When you talked about Disney or HBO Max, you're not hearing quarter to quarter what they're projecting just the next quarter to be. Netflix, they've been doing this for such a long period of time that their increases, they're only focusing on the percentage increase from quarter to quarter and making sure that they don't lose subscribers in the long haul. Everybody who started out just in the last 2 years, Disney Plus, HBO Max, everybody else, Peacock, all these other services, they're all looking at it from a different perspective. They're talking about long-term growth because they don't have long-term growth behind them like somebody like Netflix or even Prime Video, which has nothing, obviously they're not even doing numbers when it relates to this, but like they don't have the history of showing consistent growth like a company like Netflix. So I think that's the reason why we constantly hear about these forecasted numbers. But I absolutely agree with you. It's ridiculous to constantly focus on that, but it's literally what all the analysts and the investors talk about.
So should we make a promise to our listeners that we will no longer talk about subscriber numbers in light of our disappointment, let's call that, with analyst projections and kind of how meaningless they are? Do you want to be put on the record that we're no longer going to talk about it, or?
Yeah, we will. Right now, I'm not messing. As of right now, we're no longer talking about forecasted numbers. We're only talking about real numbers that they actually release quarter to quarter, because those are the ones that matter, and they're the ones that should matter. And I think that the problem is that it's just the way analysts work. They're always they're trying to figure out the best way to invest for the future, and the only way they can do that is by going off these forecasts. But we're not talking about this stuff as investors or analysts that are looking to give investment information and suggestions. So yeah, we're going to stay away from forecasted numbers.
All right, listeners, if we start going on the path or we slip up and we talk about, please call us out.
Yes.
Keep us on the straight and narrow here.
As part of that same investor day or days that took place, there was a couple of different things of note that took place when it came to HBO Max. So there's a couple of things that I just want to quickly dive into. One, Killar has specifically said that they have absolutely no intention of dealing with live sports on HBO Max within the U.S. market within 2021. He specifically said they don't have any plans this year in terms of live sports. Now, that's not to say that that won't happen in 2022, because as they've already said, that was another thing that they were looking to do once AVOD launched. So there's not to say that it's never going to happen. It's just not happening now. Obviously, that's much different than what Paramount, Peacock, Hulu, they're all doing, because they're all doing their own thing and they all are involving sports in some way. And we're going to talk more about sports, some big sports deals when it comes to that. The other thing is AVOD is officially launching in June, but they have not announced specifically how much it's going to cost at this point. However, there are a couple of details that they did reveal. One, they specifically said that the theatrical release movies that are released on HBO Max through 2021, they will not be included as part of the AVOD tier. So if you are planning on being able to check out the Matrix movie or Dune later this year on HBO Max and you're going to subscribe to the AVOD, you will not have access to those films. It's only if you subscribe to the top tier that it does not have ads. They also stated that all of the content that has HBO, that all the original HBO series will not have ads associated with them. And I'm sure that has to do with the deals and contracts that are in place for those shows to be ad-free. So you're not going to see ads during those shows. So those are the two things where AVOD, obviously at this point, we're 3 months away from the end of June where AVOD would be happening at the very latest. So it's only a matter of time, as we said just last episode, we start hearing more details about the AVOD model at HBO Max.
I mean, there's a few things here. So I'll talk about the easiest thing first. Killar has mentioned multiple times that they've had internal conversations about AVOD and having, how are ads going to work with HBO native content, like from, HBO itself. So I think it's very clear how they're, going to show no ads around HBO content, but for the other HBO Max originals. I understand that. I think it's the easiest thing. Killar has been, hinting at that for a long time. So it's nice to see that this is kind of the official way they're moving forward. But that also means that there's going to be a lot of content on HBO Max that people are going to watch. People are going to watch reruns of Game of Thrones or, Westworld or, some other stuff like that. You're going to have people watching these, reruns of very popular shows, and they're not going to be exposed to ads. So I'm curious, and I don't know how you would compute this number of the lack of revenue of not showing ads on HBO content versus the rest of the HBO Max content. But that's more of a side question that's more of my own personal curiosity. But overall, they're doing what Kalar's already been hinting at for a long time. For the sports thing, this is really interesting, yes, because we will talk about the trend of streaming services getting into sports. HBO actually has a pretty long-standing relationship with certain sports. And yes, HBO Max, Warner Media, the Turner, broadcasting network. And so all the channels that are a part of that do, sports, they're under that umbrella. And there's a lot of popular sports under that display on this channel. So I'm surprised they're not capitalizing on those. Another, big, sporting thing is, HBO Max has been HBO has been a long time player in boxing and, pay TV, pay-per-view of, different like boxing fights between that and Showtime, I think. I was never really into it. Our family was kind of poor, so we never, watched them. But I know that was a huge moneymaker for HBO. So I'm surprised they're not tapping into that well of those relationships in the boxing area of those types of fights. So overall, look, I get it. Like HBO Max has a lot of other things to deal with. They're launching AVOD. They're growing internationally. They're expanding the HBO Max original line content. So they have a lot going for them. Maybe they pick up sports in the next year when things kind of settle down and there's less on their plate. But there might not be much sports content left to bet on as 2021 we just seen a flurry of contracts being signed. That concerns me about the future growth of HBO Max. And the last thing is, look, I understand not including theatrical releases being on AVOD tier. As a user, I would be disappointed, but it makes sense that you wouldn't have that content on the AVOD tier, and it's premium content. It's either you go to the movie theater or you pay up. And if you think about it in a certain way, it's actually cheaper to pay the premium for HBO Max versus going to some of these big movies. Even if you watch like 3 of these big movies, it still might average out to where it's a pretty solid deal to just get premium HBO Max. So it makes sense. I think it's going to be a good move in terms of, I think the movie industry will look at this move as a good sign. They've had lots of complaints about Warner Media's approach to theatrical releases, and I think that this AVOD tier is going to calm some people, because there's going to be a lot of users kind of going to shift, or there's going to be a lot of signups for the AVOD tier. I think that's going to quell some of the frustration within the movie industry. So it makes sense, and I think as a customer I'd be a little bit upset, but I completely understand why they're not doing this.
Okay, so when it comes to the rest of sports in general, there's a lot of players within the streaming services that are making some deals. So the first thing is the NHL has made a new deal with ESPN that will add exclusive games specifically to ESPN Plus as well as Hulu, and NHL.TV content is going straight to ESPN Plus as part of this new deal. So that's huge when it comes to hockey. But however, the news that obviously trumped that was the fact that the NFL has reached a new 10-year deal, which will stream games on Amazon Prime Video, ESPN Plus, Tubi, Peacock, Paramount Plus, as well as Pluto TV. And to lay that specifically out, starting this is all going to be starting over the course of the next 10 years, but Prime Video is going to be airing 15 exclusive Thursday night football games, and the NFL Network will only be carrying certain Thursday and Saturday night games. ABC, ESPN, and ESPN Plus, so specifically ESPN Plus, will be able to air one international game and can simulcast Monday night football games that air on ESPN Plus or ABC. Starting the 2022 season, ESPN Plus will stream one exclusive national game each year. In 2023, ESPN will be able to broadcast one wild card and one divisional playoff game. Then for Peacock will be able to stream all of their Sunday night football games specifically on Peacock, and that gives them exclusive national rights to 6 regular season games, one per year from 2023 to 2028. They will also launch a virtual NFL channel highlighting classic games and content from NFL films. When it comes to Paramount Plus, they will be able to stream local CBS games to customers on both their ad-supported and ad-free tiers, as well as Pluto Television. And then there is, for Tubi will be able to stream Fox games available in your local market for free. So basically, anybody who has any sort of deals in place with airing games when it comes to the NFL, they are being able to bring that stuff over to their streaming services. So this is huge when it comes to, what's going on with a lot of the services in general. But what's interesting is that as far as the NFL Sunday Ticket, there's no word on that. Obviously, there's been word about it potentially moving over to ESPN Plus, but as of right now, all of the services that are currently in their parent companies already have deals in place with the NFL. They have more deals in place to take them further into the future for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about most of this news of the main linear TV, big channel, they're really part of, the NFL football landscape of, ESPN, NBC, and CBS and Fox. They all, show NFL games at various points in the season. Getting the simulcast is very huge. There are times where I have a digital tuner and I'm going to be able to get, one game here on this channel because it's not within, my local area. So I can stream it on my Roku. I'm so surprised that they were able to sign these deals. It's just huge. I think it's going to be a big boom for, these companies itself, ESPN for NBC, for CBS. It's going to grow the streaming services. Sorry, Fox as well. It's going to grow the streaming services. And I think that's going to be a lot of, you're going to have a lot of users who are going to be long-time converters. They're going to convert a bunch of users, fans of these NFL games, to long-term users. So if I were to sum up this article, is I'm surprised by the exclusivity that Amazon Prime has of these Thursday night games. I am surprised by the simulcast that's going to happen between all the big companies that are going to be that any game is going to be on their associated platform. If I had one thing that I was sad about is CBS, Paramount, they're only going to stream local CBS games on both their ad-supported and ad-free tiers. I think this is a little bit sad. So CBS and Fox, and Fox has the same thing as well, as they're going to stream Fox games in your local market as well. What frustrates me as an NFL fan is that if I watch normal TV, I can only get one game from either CBS or Fox, and it's choosing the one that's going to drive the most viewership and have the most ratings. NBC is going to pick the one out of the week that's going to have large numbers. There's usually a game in the middle of the afternoon that's split sometimes between Fox and CBS. There's other games going on, but they choose the one that they think will have the highest ratings. And now on the streaming services, they're only show the ones from the local markets. I think they're missing out on opportunity. And I understand that there's issues of regional deals that happen, and the whole issue with blackouts is annoying to a lot of fans. And I know that there's a complex web of contracts that happen there. But as a fan, I think that they have an opportunity of, okay, any game that is on Fox or any game that's on CBS at a certain time, and not just the local markets, show that on the streaming service. Because if they did that, and I promise you, if they did that, oh my word, I think that they would get a crap ton of subscribers onto those respective services because of just the choice of the games that they have. Because there's sometimes maybe your local market, your local team might just suck. If you're a Jets fan, except maybe this year they're actually looking they're going to have a promise, but if you're a Jets fan and only thing you got was Jets games and they kind of suck, that would be pretty annoying. You want to watch sometimes some of the better teams that are out there. So that is my only negative thing from this article. But overall, you see these streaming services and the parent companies really dive into sports, and they investing into sports just because that's the future. I think it's interesting that the NFL is signed deals with these other streaming services. The NFL for the long time has been a very streaming hesitant and kind of a little bit hesitant to get in the market with streaming services. You've seen the NHL, you've seen the MLB, you've also seen the NBA really expand into streaming and make deals, enjoy moving to the digital age and stuff. And you've seen the NFL kind of stay on the back and trying to just watch what's going on. And so I think it's a huge move that the NFL is diving big into streaming, and even diving into big streaming with all these other streaming services. I mean, the article lists 5 So it's cool to see the NFL take the dive, and because the NFL and it garners the largest viewership of any American sport. I'm curious what other sports leagues do now, because all right, if the NFL push the ball forward, how are these other streaming services going to follow? Because I see the example that the NFL set. Hey, we can get these deals. If the NFL can get this deal, then we can try to get this deal ourselves.
All right, so to wrap up the episode, we did have a listener who goes by liam.exe on our Discord send us a question that we're going to ask, and it specifically says, by the end of the year, what streaming service do you believe will be the winner of the 2021 streaming wars? Now, I will say, when it comes to the variety of different services, this is a hard question, but there's a couple of caveats that I think are very obvious. One, if you're specifically looking at just 2021 and you're looking at growth rate and growth percentage and things like that, I think that there's going to be a clear winner, and I'll explain why in a second. However, I honestly believe the clear loser for the year is going to be Paramount Plus. And I'm not trying to say that because I've been not pleased with Paramount Plus's service as a whole, but more about the fact that they have nothing really big to push them into, more households. That's the thing. Like, they're offering the same type of content that was available on CBS All Access. There's nothing uniquely new on Paramount Plus other than some new originals that's different. But when it comes to Peacock, obviously they have the opportunity to grow because the Olympics are still at this point happening, and that was originally what they were planning on launching with. So there's the growth from that. When you look at Disney Plus, they're on a trajectory to continue to grow. They have more of these bundles. Obviously, I truly believe that the Star Bundle is going to even grow them even more in the international markets, which is big for them. But going forward, the bundles here in the States are going to grow. But I think that they're also already at a really high number because of how much they grew just in 2020. So I'm not sure that they can have the growth rate that would project them to be the winner of 2021. When you look at Netflix, they're chugging along and they're doing great. But I still, other than them being cash flow positive, there's not a whole lot you can say this is what makes them the winner of 2021. So I'm specifically looking at growth rate and looking at what could cause growth rate, like a higher percentage of growth rate when it comes to the streaming services. And I truly believe that HBO Max is going to be the clear winner of 2021. And obviously, I am very, very bullish when it comes to HBO Max. I love the service, but there's other reasons than just my love for the service that I'm saying HBO Max, which is the AVOD model is obviously going to grow them significantly to an audience that could otherwise not have afforded HBO Max. So there's that. But the biggest thing is they're launching in international markets. When you look at Peacock and Paramount Plus, that's not happening. Paramount Plus has intentions to get into international markets, but there's no immediate plans to make that happen this year. And even if they did, they don't have a lot of content that's really going to, get a lot of audiences really anxious to check them out when they launch in other markets. It's not to say that they don't have content. It's just that I don't think that they have the same type of content that a service like HBO Max has. When you look at Peacock, they don't have any international plans to expand in the near future. So there's that. Disney Plus has already expanded internationally. Netflix has already expanded internationally. So if you're going to be able to, if you're looking at adding a service in the next year in the international markets, and you already have Disney Plus and Netflix, HBO Max is going to be one of those services that's going to become available in a lot of different countries over the course of 2021 that's going to allow HBO Max to potentially grow, but then also combine that with the AVOD. I think it's a no-brainer that they're going to probably have the largest percentage of growth across the board just because of the things that they have on deck for 2021.
I think the smart choice and the choice is a Max for the same reasons. I'm rooting for it. I enjoy it. And I think that it is on a very positive trajectory moving forward, especially with the amount of content they have. My dark horse candidate, I think that's okay. If HBO Max was, the front runner of streaming services that would be successful, I'm going to throw a dark horse. I think Discovery Plus might be the winner. And I know what people are saying Discovery Plus. I'm not even interested in the service, but as much as, HBO Max has a lot of engaging content that is definitely going to bring in a lot of people It's going to keep people around. It's very high quality. I think Discovery Plus might be the winner just because of the type of content, and that it is content that you can watch. It is content that it keeps you interested, but it's also content that you can have in the background. And I feel like for a lot of different shows, and you can just rewatch it, and I'm not saying it's mindless, but you're able to just relax. For some of these other streaming services, they can't necessarily do that. And I think that's why, like, having a show like The Big Bang Theory or The Office or Parks and Rec, other shows, kind of South Park, right? You see streaming services try to, gobble up those types of shows just because you can just put them on, you can laugh, you can move forward with your work and on your day. I think Discovery Plus has this appeal and allure. It's growing internationally. They've launched, and they're going to continue to launch in other markets. They're starting to release more original content moving forward, and there's a lot of different products in the product line of Discovery Plus that are definitely moving forward. So if I had to put a dark horse candidate and one that maybe will win, is going to be Discovery Plus. And it's not necessarily going to win just because it's going to have the biggest amount of subscribers, but I definitely think that its subscriber numbers in comparison to other streaming services, that percentage, that ratio that's going to happen is going to be greater than probably some of these other services. And I think that they can maximize and grow the number, the profits. I think that they can grow their profits and they can extract the most value out of customers versus these other streaming services. So that's my dark horse candidate. I'm rooting for HBO Max, but if I had to, if I had a bit of crazy one, it's going to be Discovery Plus. I think another surprising winner is going to be like Roku, and we've seen their growth. And thinking of Roku as a streaming service, I wouldn't have said that, definitely last year. But their Roku channel, they're growing. They're, the deals that they're signing with these, with advertisers and, rotating content in and out. They bought Quibi content, but overall, I could see them, just the percentage of users grow, their percentage of revenue grow and outpace some of these other streaming services that are out there. So those are my two dark horse candidates. Dustin, am I crazy to put some money on those?
Not necessarily. I don't think Roku, I don't think it's crazy. I don't know if the appeal is there outside of, obviously they have some content and they're looking at ramping up the original content. If you're checking out the show notes, we have some articles talking about some of the things that they've planned for growth when it comes to content. I think Discovery Plus is probably is actually something that is feasible. And I say that because they're rolling out, because I keep track of all these trailers that are coming out for the variety of different services. Discovery Plus is rolling out an insane amount of original content because their content is so cheaply made. Not sense like it's cheap content, but it just doesn't cost them very much to produce this content. So they can create an enormous amount of original content that's not the same level of content as like an HBO original or something like that. So I think the other thing with Discovery Plus is that they have the ability to, if you were, let's say this, if you were an office that had a waiting room, a hospital, a doctor's office, a dentist's office, any place that has any sort of waiting room, and you have a TV going and you want to cut the cord and you don't want to pay for cable anymore, you still have internet in your building, you're going to potentially, if you have a TV and you need to have service, you get a Roku or you get some sort of streaming device and you subscribe to Discovery Plus, you could literally just run Discovery Plus all day long with content that is not going to be offending to anybody for the most part, and you could just run it all day. And I think that, like you said, it's the perfect type of background content, and that's the thing. So because of that, that's it's entirely intentional that could be. I wouldn't say. I still think that HBO Max is going to be the winner, but I truly believe that you've got a good point when it comes to Discovery Plus.
Dustin, I have one more piece of bonus news, but have you heard that Walmart's going to launch an Android TV stick?
Yeah, which is very odd. I have heard this. We actually have a link in the show notes. To be fair, I think that this is the dumbest thing in the world. It screams typical Walmart's trying to get their hands in other, baskets of stuff to try to mess with it. But they just sold off Vudu, which was profitable for them, and they got rid of it. And I don't understand why they would decide, hey, this is the time that we're going to start this. To a degree, they tried to make Vudu profitable, even more profitable by offering content. But this seems like it would be the exact same thing. They're going to do they're going to try to do exactly what Roku did, which is create a device that does not cost very much, offer, the ability to have your services on a device. But I think the thing is, Rokus are already that very inexpensive. Almost all the devices are pretty inexpensive. So I don't know, unless they're going to come on the market and have something that's like $10 or $15, and somehow you're going to be able to stream your content, and they're just going to bank off the fact that they're going to, go off of the referrals that they're going to make from potentially people signing up or advertisement of content that they have licensed. But honestly, I think it's a bad idea.
I think that Walmart, as they always do, are about to really dominate the customers who want a very cheap but decent streaming device. And I think Roku for the longest time has met that need. But this Walmart branded Android stick is $2K. And I don't know what the price is going to be, but they're definitely going to underprice Roku. The cheapest Roku device out there is $30, and it's just HD. It's not even 2K. It's not even 4K. It is HD. And then the size up that will do 4K as the Roku is, $35. $35 gives you 4K. $30 gives you just HD. I have no clue what this on brand is going to be in that price, but I bet it's going to be lower and you get 2K. And because of that, I think that this is going to put Roku on the edge. It's going to put Roku on their heels, and they're going to have to do something because, yes, their more expensive items are really great. I think the experience of delivering 4K and HDR are just pretty awesome. But they're lower priced products. Walmart might just eat into that. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think that that's a huge risk for Roku moving forward in 2021 as we will track throughout the year. Is what is Walmart going to do? Will this actually launch? And if so, how disruptive is that going to be to Roku's business?
All right. And with that is going to wrap up this episode. If you are interested in checking out any of the articles that we talked about here or any of the other news that has happened over the past 2 weeks, be sure to check out our website, thestreamingwars.io, for all of the show notes, including all of the news articles that have happened within the streaming wars over the past 2 weeks. If you are interested in checking out any of the trailers that have released for any of the upcoming content coming to streaming services, be sure to check out our YouTube channel where we have playlists associated with every streaming service, and they are set up so that you can see the latest specific trailers that release from those services. In addition to that, you can follow us on Twitter and join our Discord to also see the articles as they release, and you can follow us on Instagram for all latest announcements related to new episodes of the podcast posting. Finally, you can send us an email at thestreamingwars@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, or topics you'd like us to discuss on future episodes. And for Tony and myself, this has been The Streaming Wars. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to The Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.